started. So hello and welcome to This is Recruiting, a webinar series by Hackerearth. If you're here with us for the first time, This is Recruiting is a webinar series that we started to get the best of the best in the industry to help you understand a little bit more about the recruiting world, the problems we face, and get some more insights into it. So if you're here for the first time and hearing about Hackerearth for the first time, we are a global company that basically plays matchmaker to recruiters and the best tech talent. So we help you increase your hiring efficiency by up to 66% and help you speed up your entire hiring process. This is because we have a platform that gives you robust coding assessments, that gives you virtual real-time face code, which is our coding interview platform. And we also help you to continuously upskill and engage your technical talent through hackathons and learning and development. So if you'd like to know more about us, about how we can help you speed up your entire recruiting cycle, you can visit us at hackerearth.com/recruit. The website is right there, or you can drop me a comment. And without further ado, let's get started with This is Recruiting. And today we have a very special guest here with us, Valerie Vadala. Hi, Valerie. How are you doing?
Good. How you doing, Rebecca?
So just to give you a little bit of introduction about Valerie, I've had the pleasure of talking to her a couple of times before this, and she is super fun to talk to. I think it's a funny story, actually. I found Valerie because I heard a podcast that she had done called Talk Talent to Me, where she kind of covered the exact same topic. And this is how I knew, she is the person to get for this. So we're going to be discussing employer branding and creating an employee value proposition. But before we get into that, Valerie, can you give us a little bit about yourself? Tell us about how you got started and your story so far.
Sure. And thank you so much for having me. I have to just add to that story. I was super tickled when she reached out to me. It was my only podcast I ever did. And I had a lot of fun with it. And then she said, hey, do you want to talk about employer branding, which is something that I'm really interested in, that I'm really passionate about, but didn't necessarily think of myself as an expert. So we had a great conversation, and I'm so happy to be here. So just a little background about me. I have been essentially recruiting my entire career. I was a lawyer for like a nanosecond, didn't enjoy that. Got into legal recruiting, and then I've been in recruiting since I started my career. I love recruiting. I love talent acquisition. I started on the agency side. I moved to in-house when I joined Lehman Brothers many years ago, and I have been a recruiting leader for a large portion of my career as well. So I always kind of blend it. I do both recruiting. I'm a player coach. I never want to be like the grand poobah who doesn't do the work. I like to be in the trenches. I like to connect. I love what we do. I think that most of you on the call are likely in talent acquisition, and I hope that you're as passionate about it as I am. So right now I am the global head of talent acquisition at Shutterstock. I have a team of around 9 recruiters and coordinators, and we cover globally. We're probably facing a lot of the same challenges everybody else here is. Really, this is the role where, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, where I've really been deep diving on building the employer brand.
Awesome. So let's get started with a couple of questions, about employer branding, because I think this is a topic that a lot of people struggle with, like you had mentioned, in our conversation before, because of the whole Great Resignation. You mentioned that a lot of people and employers especially need to take a more human-centric approach to figuring out how work works for them.
Yeah.
So I think, one of the common topics and a problem that a lot of people face right now is, how do you tell whether your employer brand is good or not? Like your existing brand, can it work in, today's world right now? So I think, the first thing that we need to cover is, what do you do to figure out what's going well and what's not working for you right now? So how would you, conduct an audit on your employer brand?
Right. Well, so the thing about an employer brand is that it's still kind of, for most companies, I would say, something that's developing, right? I'd say, at least in my eyes, like you only started hearing about it the last, say, 5 years or so.
Mm.
People were really talking about it. In fact, I remember earlier in my career where I would ask for the marketing to help me when I was trying to kind of get the word out about like roles or about the company and why it's so great to work there. And generally speaking, marketing departments used to be like, sorry, I'm too busy like serving our clients and customers. I don't have time to message to potential employees, right? So it's been something that's kind of been evolving. So there's probably a lot of people on this call that are like, I don't even know what our employer brand is. And so that's totally normal. I mean, a lot of us are there. And that's kind of where I was in the journey at Shutterstock. So some of the ways that you can audit it is like, how high is your attrition? How many people are applying to roles? Because, there's always this kind of, people are like, oh, post and pray. That's not how you're going to find good candidates, which is a lot of bull, because most of our jobs we get from applicants that have applied. Like if only we had time to really, actively recruit for every search. That's not the case. But like, how many people are actually applying? How many qualified people are applying for your roles? That's a good way to assess. Like, do you have a brand? What is it? Glassdoor reviews. I mean, the bane of my existence in many ways. But the truth is, it matters, and it's if there are themes or things along those lines, you got to take a look at them and you've got to listen to them. You can look at pulse surveys within your organization. You should be doing at least an annual survey, as well as maybe, like I said, a pulse survey every 6 months or so, to see how employees are feeling, how engaged they are with the company. All of those things are pieces of your employer brand. So it's really about what it feels like every day to go to work, and how connected you are to an organization. And that's the part you want to make it as sticky as possible. That's where the Great Resignation is really fascinating to me. And I've been paying a lot of attention. I spend way too much time scrolling TikTok, and I'm on Recruiter Talk or whatever you would call it. And all of these people that are leaving and why they're leaving and how many of them are leaving not for another job. And what is that saying about the place where they were working? And these are all things that we have to think about. And so when you're auditing your employer brand, you pay attention to things like that.
Right. So you mentioned surveys that you do, internally.
Yes.
So, can you give me a few examples on what would you include in a survey? I know, from personal experience, whenever we get surveys, I tend to be guilty, one of those people who does not fill them in at all. So,
you must fill them in. They're totally anonymous. I encourage you to do it.
So
that's how we, go ahead.
And what are the kind of questions that, would draw me into it? Like, I know that, there are a few questions about, how you feel and how you feel the leadership team is, or maybe even other teams that are there. But what are those questions that, might really resonate with an employee?
I think that it's about how valued you feel in the organization, how much you feel like you are supported to be able to get the work done that needs to get done. How you feel about your direct manager is always very telling. How if you see yourself staying within the next year, like a question like that. So you can kind of tell how many people are like, yeah, I got one foot out the door in this place. Things along those lines will kind of give you an idea of the pulse of the organization and how people are feeling. And the leadership question is an important one, how people think about that, because it's not just about, even if you're 5 levels down from senior leadership, it's about how much faith you have in the strategy and the direction of the organization. And that kind of tells you how involved or engaged you would be, a person would be, an employee is. So it's an important question.
Right. So within the same thing, right, do you think employees might, how honest are they in these questionnaires and these surveys and stuff? And what would you think would be like a way to get employees in general to, advocate for the brand? That's actually what our next question is. How do you build engagement among your current employees so that, you can make them advocates?
Right. So I do. I mean, maybe I'm naive, but surveys are, and well, we're all in HR, but I'm, a leader in HR, and I can tell you that anywhere I've ever worked, the surveys are it's usually a third party vendor that does them, and they're fully anonymous. I mean, the only place where there might be where somebody could kind of figure out who might be talking is in the free-form comment section. And even then, not usually the case, depending on the size of the company. So I'd like to think that for me, it's always been pure honesty. And because sometimes it's just really kind of venting and getting it out, it's like your place to have a voice. So I like to think that people are honest. I think it's like the place where when they happen, you can really, and any company I've worked at, after the results come in, you have a whole assessment, and it's like, okay, you're in the green zone here, you're doing great, yellow, red. And then you should be working on those areas and saying, okay, I worked for a company where people were saying that they didn't feel like they could communicate as openly as they wanted to. And so we really focused on, okay, you need to feel safe about speaking out. We want you to, and so that was something that mattered a lot. So I think that surveys, like I said, you should be fully honest. In terms of how to engage current employees, and actually this probably I could have addressed in your first question, we're right now at Shutterstock, we're going through a whole employment brand kind of overhaul, creating new messaging, things along those lines. And we actually engaged with an agency that specializes in it. It's called Blue Ivy. They're in Canada. We're still in the middle of it, but I think they're phenomenal. So if anybody's looking for an agency to work with. And so they've done a few pieces of research within the organization. The first thing they did was they interviewed one-on-one 10 of our senior leaders, which we chose, the people that they would speak with. And then I had to get 5 focus groups of about 10 people, employees, all different, levels, all different areas. And they had focus groups where HR wasn't even allowed in them. So that, and again, it couldn't be fully anonymous because, it was a video call, but, we don't know who said what or anything like that. And so, by having those focus groups, I had to invite the employees to do it. And, and then only a few of them, about 50 of them were, said that they would do it for us. But that helps build engagement because they're the ones that are talking about the culture. They're talking about the good pieces and the bad pieces and how they see the company, which helps us build our message and our vision. And so I think that that's a good way to kind of engage employees and let them know that they're part of this process, that we are building this brand and we're building this message, and it's going to be both internal and external. I also think that once you've kind of got a vision of what your brand is, a vision of what your employee value proposition is, you need to message it and you need to help them become brand ambassadors and be part of getting the word out about your brand and why it's so great to work for your company.
Right. So with engagement itself, like you mentioned, you ask people to be part of focus groups and surveys, and these are everything that you get from them about what their opinion is right now and right. What they're feeling about everything and stuff there. Have you seen it actually play an impact? Do people come back after, these processes and give you feedback that, okay, yeah, I said this and this happened. I feel like you've heard me. Have you, seen that before? Has that been have you experienced that in any of the companies you've worked with before?
So in these focus groups, because it wasn't, it could have been, I'm sure that there was some venting and things along those lines, but nobody necessarily in this case came back to me and said, I feel it's been heard. But I think that when that does happen is when you change as a result of, and that could be through, a lot of times it's through exit interviews that you learn about things when people are leaving, why they're leaving. If there are things that you have to touch on in those situations, you should definitely pay attention to that. And we pay a lot of attention to that. As I said, Glassdoor is something that should be paid attention to. I always tell the story of, I worked at Wells Fargo. I didn't work at Wells Fargo in 2016 when they they got in some trouble, like they had some cross-selling problems, and they got in a lot of trouble legally. But if you looked at their Glassdoor reviews, people were saying, they're making us do this, they're making us do that. And so there's a lot of times there's a story there that if you pay attention and there's patterns, a good company is going to pay attention to that and they're going to change as a result of it.
That's actually really comforting to know that Glassdoor reviews mean something and people take it seriously, at least. Because I know
not always. I always say that it's a mix, because it's like I always say that, like Yelp reviews, I'm like, it's always a person that found a cockroach in their salad, right? So there's always going to be people who, like, just had a bad experience and it might have been personal. But if there are themes, like, pay attention to themes, that's what I would say. Yeah.
Right. So building off of this itself, about turning your employees into brand advocates. So, I think this was a question that came, we had released a poll a while back and people were responding to this. And I remembered something that was really funny, like a personal anecdote I had in a previous company that I worked with. Someone had left our organization and hated it so much that they trashed our entire Wikipedia page. And that is like the extreme of being a complete anti brand, being completely against the message for everything you stand for. So how do you ensure that something like that never happens to anyone else?
It's funny. That never even occurred to me that you can, of course you can change a Wikipedia page, but would have never even occurred to me. I mean, there's no way to ensure that you're not going to have disgruntled employees. I mean, it's everywhere. And really one of the reasons that I went through this employment brand exercise with Shutterstock is because we were going through a lot of transformation. We went from being founder-led through 17 years of the company to having a CEO. This was all during the pandemic. So, we're dealing with some discomfort when you're kind of changing your business model and things along those lines. So to an extent, you just got to kind of roll with it, right? But I think that the way that you kind of push back against that is to look at the patterns and to make sure that most of the people that are working are happy and are satisfied and are feeling connected to the organization. And it's very hard to do post-pandemic because you're not, we just did return to office, but it's still a couple days a week. It's not like you're in the office all the time, and it's very hard to feel connected to an organization, and also to sense when people are not connected, right? Like if you're at work, you can kind of get a better vibe of who is, very tuned in and who's not. Like even body language in a meeting or something, you can just tell. Whereas it's much harder to do in post-pandemic world. But I think that it's incredibly important to just, make sure that most of your employees are happy. You're going to get your renegades to go on your Wikipedia, and you just gotta, and you have to also, I would also say, be very honest. I respond to our Glassdoor reviews. If you're allowed to do that, I encourage you to do it because, I want people to know they've been heard, both the good and the bad. I want them to know, okay, we hear you. And, I'm sorry your experience was this way. However, and, you can kind of rebut it in that way.
So we have a question here from Neha, who has asked, what could be the best practices for turning employees as brand advocates? I think this is something that, is super important for both HR and marketing, because it's always great for people like your own employees to promote your brand on whether it's social media, whether it's even by word of mouth. So, but how do you check whether they're communicating the right message, and what would be like the best practice to get them to, sort of move on that?
Right. So I think that one of the ways, and this is something that we'll end up doing, and just to let you know kind of where we are in our employment brand journey in the next few weeks. So Blue Ivy has done everything in terms of the research, and then they're going to come back with some creative ideas and telling us kind of what they heard, and we're going to work together on messaging and what makes the most sense and what resonates the most. So we will have a lot of social media content. So create content that they can share. And when I think of social media, it's still mainly LinkedIn. I'm trying to get us to start a TikTok channel. I know some people are still Facebook. I don't know. It seems a little yesterday to me, but I think it's mainly LinkedIn. And I think that people are willing to share really cool content. They don't want to share anything too canned like most people, but I think that you can encourage people to share things that are like just very kind of interesting and that they think, again, I use this word, but resonates, that makes sense. I mean, that's part of the thing about branding that's really important to remember is obviously you're trying to show your best self or your company's best self, but it has to be real and honest and authentic, because it's kind of like a dating app. Like you're going to show the best part of who you are, but you want it to be you, because you don't want somebody to come in and then be like, you're nothing like what you said you were. So it's very important for it to be authentic. And if it's authentic, your employees are going to be more willing to do that. You also should have a really robust employee referral program. Employee referrals are some of the best hires, like statistically, that you can make because they understand culturally what works for you. So have a robust employee referral program. That will make people more willing to be ambassadors for the brand. And then you can do some interesting things like, Shutterstock is a creative company. And so we have some people that are super creative. We have like one woman that has like 250,000 followers on TikTok. We have another product manager, actually a leader who just dropped a song. Like she's an artist, and we're going to start. Yeah. And so we're going to start featuring, we're going to do like some sort of superstar thing where we're featuring our employees and kind of showcasing their talents. Like, so find your personality within your employee population, whatever that personality might be. I mean, we help creators create. That's what we do. So the fact that we have creative people is normal and cool, and we should be showcasing it. But you can find something that kind of, maybe it's the guy that hacked Wikipedia. Like it could be like somebody who like somebody that has really good, technical knowledge or whatever, but showcase people's skills. And I think that employees, if they're kind of put on a pedestal a little bit and like you're kind of bragging about who they are outside of even work, I think it's a cool thing.
I actually really like that. I think that's something we've noticed in Hackerearth as well. So even though we're a tech company, we are very gender inclusive. Because we have the whole this is the whole Women's History Month and stuff. We've been showcasing a lot of different women within the company. People who are just doing dynamite things all over. So I really like the point you said about finding your company's personality within an employee and then kind of showcasing that. I think that's like a super quotable thing.
Yep, absolutely. I'm really excited about our Superstars spotlight that we're going to be doing, actually.
I look forward to seeing that. Like I especially the person who's releasing a song.
I know. She put it on LinkedIn and we were all like, what? We had no idea. So that's what made us think, wow, we have a lot of people here that are doing such cool stuff that we don't even know about. Yeah.
I think that's like the best way to actually engage employees, become their besties outside of work, even though
right. And lift them up, say, look, and see them as individuals. It's so important. And I think that that's part of that Great Resignation, where you don't feel like that. You feel like just a number. You feel like you're just a cog in a wheel, and it's easy to leave. But if you're valued for who you are and what you contribute, you're much more likely to stay.
Right. So, moving forward from this to our next question, which again is something I think you're an expert in with employee value propositions. So, let's talk about what is the most relevant thing to include for this year, for, 2022. I think there's a lot of content that's already coming, in terms of what employees can gain by either, if offices are starting over again, if people are coming back physically, or even if you're continuing remote working, what is it that you're learning? What is it? How are you growing? And these are things I think that post-pandemic have become super important right now to realize. So, what are your opinions on it? And what is Shutterstock doing with their EVP?
Right. So I think that for the first thing you want to think about is like what matters to you in a job, because it's most likely going to matter to other people as well. So, an employee value proposition should provide incentives that don't just reward hard work, but they create a supportive and inclusive work environment. Like you were talking about the gender inclusivity, the DEI piece is incredibly important, and something that you should highlight, but you should also truly value. Like our head of DE&I is very big on like, this should just be a part of our DNA. This isn't a box we're checking. This should be what we believe and how we live our values. So that's a very important thing. But so EVP should be a mix of tangible things like comp and benefits and intangible things like culture and values, right? So compensation is important. It is. It just is. Benefits are important. I mean, I know in the United States, like healthcare benefits and just there's a lot of different benefits people really care about. Work-life balance, and not just saying it, but meaning it. And this is something that I think really has become harder through the pandemic, in that, I don't know about you, but what I have found really interesting is this strange kind of where you're just in meetings all day, like this intensity of a day, it's not even necessarily about the hours, but just like, do you actually have time to take a break? Like, even if it's a half an hour or an hour, do you have that time? So I think that work-life balance is a very important piece. You talked about the return to office. I tend to like being in the office a couple of days a week. I don't know how any of us did it 5 days a week. I don't know that I could go back to that, even though that was my life until 2020. So I think that the hybrid and remote options, if you don't offer that, I had a friend actually that was offered a really good job with a company that it was a commercial real estate company. So the commercial real estate company was like, listen, we need you in the office 5 days a week because we need everybody in the office 5 days a week or else we're going to lose a lot of money, right? So that was part of it. And she was like, I don't want to do that because not only do I not want to go in the office 5 days a week, I don't want to have to recruit people to work 5 days a week because that is a hard job right now to recruit people to have to come in the office 5 days a week. So, I think that the hybrid remote is something that you definitely need to put in your value proposition. Stability matters, is it a place where they lay people off or let people go very quickly, things like along those lines. People want to know that it's a place where they are safe. And then that piece that I think this is where the intangible things go. Like, do you value the contributions of your employees? And do you respect them? Do you see your employees as subject matter experts that are adding, whatever level they are, that are adding to the shared goal and strategy and bottom line of the organization? People need to feel valued. And then the last thing I would say is, and this is especially important with Gen Z, and I think millennials as well, but I mean, everybody to an extent, is this development and growth, both in terms of your career path and do you have a career path there, as well as are we kind of helping you to develop, even if it means you go somewhere else and do it. Like, are you making them a better person, both professionally and personally? These are some things that I would think about adding to an EVP.
Okay, yeah, that's like, I think you've covered pretty much everything. I really like the part about the career path, because I know that I've left organizations because I wasn't given like a defined career path. They weren't able to tell me where my growth was and, what was the next step and how do I go from here? Am I learning more? Am I, staying stagnant? Things like that. I think that's super important. Just going to allow, a little bit of questions in. If anyone has any questions about EVP so far, if there's anything, you'd like us to cover before we get on to, later topics, just put it in the Q&A box right here, or you can put it in the chat box. Okay, I have a chat. I think this has been sent just to me though. So Audrey here is asking about authenticity in branding. I think that was something that we did like a little while before, about how you stay authentic, even though I think what she means at least is, how do you stay authentic, when you're talking about so many different things? There are a lot of companies that are touching upon, inclusivity, diversity. There are people who are touching upon,
Right.
Mental health. There are people who there are organizations that are covering a lot of these different topics. And how do you, make sure that you are giving equal attention to each? Or do you just stay with one, or do you stay with many?
Well, I think that, when I talked about all those areas that you should be touching on, I think that, obviously you're not going to be strong in all of them. You might be somewhere where the comp is not great, right? So you need to really double down on other things. And Audrey, I would tell you that I value the fact that I am an authentic person. And so it is something that I think about. And as I said, like that dating metaphor, right? Like if you're on I don't know, Bumble or whatever, you want to show your best self, but you want to show your true self. And not only just because you don't want people to come in and say, that's not, what you presented yourself as, but you also want to attract the right people. You want people to see your brand. Like, for example, I'm not a work hard, play hard kind of person. Like, as soon as I hear that's like, to me, like code, like, oh my God, no, I don't want to work at that place. But there are people that like that kind of like, that kind of bro culture thing and whatever. So if that's what you're saying, then, and that's what you're putting out there, you're going to attract certain type of people to it. We're also relaunching our career site, which is kind of crap right now, but it's going to be fabulous in another few weeks. So keep your eyes out for our career site. But the company that we're working with on the career site, the woman was like trying to give us examples of how to do it. And she's like, yeah, for example, if it's like a fun place, if it's just fun, you want to put fun. She was like saying it like that. She was so annoying. But, and I was thinking, that just is not resonating with me. And it's, I don't want to say we're the opposite of fun, but we're not like, oh, board game night. Oh, I don't even know what fun people like companies do, but like, you know what I mean? But I'm like, that doesn't resonate. But what does resonate is we're innovative, we're creative, we're cool. And so when you look at our career site, and I would imagine our brand messaging, those are the pieces that's authentic. Like fun is not necessarily our authenticity. Let's say your company's really big on volunteering. Like that is something that you could talk about and really kind of, put out there as something that you value. And so I think that it's very important to stay authentic, but just think of the good pieces of what your company has to offer that you can put out there that, you feel like are real and true.
I think just that builds in perfectly to our next question, because with our career site, we also have, like, at least here at Hackerearth, we have culture codes and, things about learning and development and what you can get from it. And does it make a difference on a website? So like you said, with your new career site, the pieces that you're putting together there are pieces that show part of your culture.
Right.
So would you have that stated explicitly, or, is that something that you need to kind of give people a bit of a hint of, or how exactly would it change a career site?
So we are definitely in our career site, we're touching on a lot of these pieces and the things that we value and the tangible things that we offer in terms of benefits and things along those lines, and our, that we value diversity. So all of those pieces are on there. And I would imagine that there are people that really go and they look at that and it matters to them. I'm not personally one of those people. Like, I don't, like, if I'm applying for a job, I'm not like, let me check out that career site and really dig deep into that tab and that tab. It's just different people. So you should certainly have all of that there. But for me, what was more important is, like I said, we're very creative, right? At Shutterstock, and our career page was not. And so I worked with, we had a team. It wasn't just me, but I had a team that, like, we had a designer, like, within Shutterstock that really helped us. And now it's going to be like these amazing pictures, like just saturated, like awesome photos. I mean, why would we not have that? That's who we are, right? So I think that it's more like that. And like when I was looking at ideas for career sites, like one of the career sites I looked at was like Activation Blizzard, which is like it's a gaming company. And theirs was like, like what you'd imagine a gaming companies would look like, right? And so I think that there are ways to show on your site what your personality is and what you have to offer that are more like a feel versus what you have down there. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe there are a lot of people that really dig deep and look into that, but I don't necessarily.
Yeah, I think I'm not one of those people either, but I remember when I did join Hackerearth, there was like, just in bold letters there about, the sort of people we hire, the sort of people that's like the life, at least at Hackerearth and stuff. And that really resonated with me. So I know that, at least to a great extent, I could get the feel of the company as and when you look at it. And I think that's super important to have.
And the other thing I would add, by the way, is job descriptions. The way you write a job description, and ours are not bad at Shutterstock, but I have more to do there, because my big thing with job descriptions is speak human. Don't, that whole robotic, like you should speak human. You don't have to list everything like all these like novellas that you get. There's these long lists. It's like, you want it to just get the essence of what the role is, but you want them to hear you speaking, you, the company, talking about the job. And that's a really important way to kind of get your culture and your voice out there.
Right. I think we did have a lot of questions about job descriptions, before the webinar, also about, what are the best ways to write job descriptions and how do you market them correctly and what's the best way to market them. And I think that's just a whole rabbit hole.
Yes.
Completely different.
It's important though. It's very important. Yeah.
So we do have another question that came in. How do you do career mapping as a part of employee branding?
So it's something that we're working on actually at Shutterstock. And this is very common. Like I've worked at a couple of places where the place that you see the most movement in a career is sales, because sales is often almost lockstep in terms of, you're this role, then your internal sales and your external sales, and it's very kind of easy to move up. But other parts of the organization, a lot of companies, especially if you're not that big, you don't see a lot of this kind of cross functional, like, just moving. If you're not getting promoted in your own role, like you wouldn't see somebody in recruiting necessarily going to tech, whatever. Although we did have that, somebody became a project manager in tech from talent acquisition at Shutterstock. But anyway, it's rare. And I want to see more of that. And I think that it should be part of an employment brand and an employee value proposition. And it's, but I will tell you that the one place where I saw it kind of develop and blossom was when I was at Credit Suisse, actually. And what happened was they just put somebody very impactful in the head of internal mobility. And that person got with senior leadership and said, this is going to have to be important, and got with talent acquisition and said, okay, we're going to start really looking at internal candidates and spending the time to talk to them and see what skills are transferable. And it became kind of, part of almost kind of like DE&I should be part of the performance evaluation. Did you have any internal transfers? And so I think that a lot of times even employees don't think like, oh, I'm in sales, but I really want to be in social media or whatever, and so you need people to kind of take charge of their own careers. We're not career counselors, so it's like take charge of your own career, but you need to give them the tools to be able to build the skills to get into those roles. I do think it's important though.
So I think Paras had asked that question. I hope that answers it. We are going to now open up the Q&A from the audience, and we already have one that's right here. So Katie has asked us, how do you encourage Glassdoor reviews? Our company has had a ton of negative ones from 5+ years ago.
So yes. So first of all, you should respond to them. It's important, even the bad ones and the good ones, both of them. But what we try to do is, if like when somebody has been, let's say they've been there, if you, let's say you have like 90-day evaluations or something when somebody starts, after you meet with them, after HR meets with them, we'll send them an email and just say, hey, it's totally anonymous. You just, we don't say write a good one, but we're just like, we want to get more people like you, and it helps when we get reviews. Another thing that you can do is when you're kicking off a search, like we have an email that we send to the hiring manager that says, here's the LinkedIn link to the post. Please share it with your network. by the way, people look at Glassdoor, so we encourage you to leave a review. And so, again, you're not telling them to leave a good one, but they're thinking, I got to fill a job, and I want people to be interested in my job. So that's a good way to kind of get some traction on because it's surprising. You would really think that like people in management level and senior leadership would leave reviews, but they don't. So it's good to kind of encourage them that way.
That's actually really smart. I think that's something I need to tell our future as well. We have another question here from Jim. Are happy hours good for culture? As an employee, I would say yes. But Valerie?
Yeah. No, yes. It's something I miss a lot and we just had one with return to office. But I do miss, but here's the thing. It's got to be, some people just aren't comfortable with it. So it's got to be the sort of thing where if you're not into it, you don't feel like you're excluded by not attending or not, being part of it. But I do think that the places where I've felt, the most connected and the most joyful were when I did like to spend time with people, outside of, just the work stuff. So I think that that's really important. Again, what we're trying to think about are things that make it sticky, things that make it that you're not like, I'm just going to leave for $10,000. I'm just going to leave for, or for nothing. And so the idea of enjoying your colleagues is huge. It's enormous. So I think it's a very good thing.
Is that something, you would add to, like, say, your careers page, or when you're talking about your culture and stuff, would you talk about how you have these fun nights or even happy hours?
I would not, because, personally, first of all, it's that work hard, play hard thing. Like, I want people to want to do that. I feel like that's more something that you offer, like when somebody's there and they realize, and it's something you could certainly talk about in interviews and everything else. I wouldn't necessarily put it on the page, but you can put things like we do a hackathon. And, there are things that you do, or like I said, the volunteer events, like things like that make sense. But like the happy hour, it gives me a little bit of that WeWork vibe, like that bro culture, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not something I'd necessarily showcase and brag about on a career site.
Right. I think Elizabeth mentioned here that we do virtual trivia nights, monthly and virtual movie nights, and all started since the pandemic started.
See, she's at a fun company. She could use fun, which is great. That's awesome.
So we have a question from Aisha here. What are 3 to 5 key things to highlight on the website or career page about the company to attract candidates?
Well, you should talk about your principles or, your brand, the things that you truly believe in. I don't like to say North Star because it's kind of overdone, but really what is the thing that you're kind of, you believe, like you're as a company, benefits people care about, PTO people care about, the remote hybrid thing people care about. So those pieces are the things that you want to highlight. And again, try to find a way to relay what the vibe of the organization is. And like I said, we're going to have these fabulous pictures and this creative, innovative, creative, that's kind of like a big message for us. So think about what you think of your company and what the personality is, and try to relay that in the career site.
Okay. I hope that answers your question. If there's any other questions, please do put it in the... Okay, yes. There we go. Thanks. Any other questions, please put it in the chat box or in the Q&A. We have another one that again was sent to me about authenticity once more. I think this is something that I'm guessing it's a little troubling for people. So when you have particular months highlighting things like Women's History Month or Pride Month, how do you attach these concepts to your brand? So I think that means, how you come across without posturing, like support.
Right.
The whole
right. Yes.
Without making sure that it looks too showy.
Yes. It's a very good question. I would say that, most organizations, they do whatever the Heritage Month is, they kind of put things out there. if you feel good about sharing those things, if you feel like it's legitimate and it's kind of from the heart, then feel free to. But if you don't, like I don't tend to share a lot of things in social media that come from our organization. I think it's awesome when people do, but I like to do things that come from like my heart, right? And so I like when I first started at Shutterstock, what I wanted to do during the Heritage Months was find editorial pictures. There's some like rare, like let's say Black History Month, like rare photos that we might have in our editorial, like Jackie Robinson or something that had a story and like showcase that, right? So that's the authenticity piece where I'm actually using an asset of ours and I'm telling a story and it's kind of related to that, whatever the Heritage Month is, if it's like Stonewall, LGBTQ or whatever. So that was like a way that I wanted to kind of showcase who we were and also what I believed in. So I guess this is a very meandering way to say, if you think it's BS and that your company doesn't do it, I wouldn't necessarily go there. Like your company's going to do it. But if it's something you believe in, if it's something you want your company to be more into, just find a way to do your own message. And just the fact that if you put it out there on LinkedIn, like I'm incredible. I'm a liberal person. I'm, very kind of pro diversity, pro women, all these things. And if you go on my page, you will see that the posts I do, I am that person. And so to me, that I'm the head of talent acquisition. You're a recruiter. You're what it resonates that you're speaking for the organization in those ways. So even if it's not your company, if it's how you feel, then put it out there.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people, this comes back to the same concept of, turning your employers into brand advocates and how much of that do they actually believe in what you're posting and things that you're talking about. And that ties into another question we have about how to turn your senior management into brand advocates or get them to advocate more openly about the company.
Yeah. So, like what we did with Blue Ivy, where we had the senior leaders talking to them to give them an idea of what they think the brand is. And then once we get the materials, it's going to be a push for everybody in the organization, and we're going to use a lot of different channels like, videos, and we're going to do on Slack, and we're going to have a lot of messaging. But it's certainly going to be something that, we're going to tell the senior leaders, we've done all this research, we've done focus groups. This is like a pulse survey, and this is the message that we're coming out with. And you just need to, tell them that this is part of their role is to push that out. Hopefully the messaging that comes out is based on a lot of what they believe the culture is as well, so that they will live it.
So does it help to have, content put out of senior managers, maybe involve them in like taking the videos, like you mentioned, right? Just take videos of them talking about the company, talking about what we're doing, and then they'll be more inclined to repost it or market it better.
Yes, I think that's a great suggestion, is to have them do videos. And I find that senior leadership, and not just at Shutterstock, just in general, if you write it, they will share. I don't know how there aren't too many.
And they will come.
Exactly. Like they will. If you give it to them, if you serve it up, they're happy to share it. So I think that a lot of times you do have to spoon feed them a little bit with it, but that's the job. That's what branding is about. So yeah.
So I think that's it for the questions. Do we have any more? Just going to leave that open here in case anyone else wants to ask, because we do have a few minutes left. Okay, not too much actually. But yeah, so okay, if anyone has any other questions, you can write to us at Hackerearth, or you can drop me another message here. You have my email ID because I've sent you many webinar requests and requests to register for it. So we will relay that across, or you can follow Valerie on her LinkedIn. I'm sure, you'll get a lot of over there about employer branding. Do listen to her podcast that she did before, because I personally found that incredible.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Valerie. This was a great session, super insightful. I think, the thanks are rolling in here.
Thank
right
you.
now.
I hope that you all feel very inspired to get the message out. I will leave you with this. It is not easy to be a recruiter right now. This should be our time in the sun with everything that we're going through, but it is not easy and it can sometimes be thankless. But I do think that what we do is the most important job in a company. Sincerely, we are actually building the companies. So just hang in there, keep doing good work, keep trying to match people and help them find the right jobs for themselves.
Yeah. Thank you so much again, Valerie. I am sure we will have you back again soon. This was a great session.
Pleasure.
And I'll talk to you soon. Thank you once again.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.